The alien queen married a human to secure peace, then saw him fight like a god of war. This world, home to the Valorians, had long been a place of discipline, order, and unmatched beauty. Yet, beneath its serene surface, tensions simmered. A war between humans and Valorians had threatened to erupt for generations. At the heart of Zalaris stood Palace Thalira, an architectural wonder that combined elegance and strength. Here ruled Queen Thalira, the youngest and most brilliant Valorian leader in history. She was known for her wisdom, fairness, and determination to bring lasting peace to her people. But even with her intellect and diplomacy, the threat of conflict loomed. The morning was unlike any other. Word had spread quickly among the Valorians. The human diplomat, Captain Eric Kane, had arrived on Zalaris. He was a man of unusual reputation, known for his sharp mind, calm demeanor, and a talent for turning impossible situations into victories. Humans were rarely trusted here, and yet he had been chosen for a purpose larger than any individual achievement. Thalira stood on the palace balcony, her tall, elegant form outlined against the rising sun. Her eyes, violet and piercing, watched the landing bay where Eric's shuttle had touched down. The craft was small, sleek, and undeniably human. As it opened, he stepped out, tall and steady, his brown eyes scanning the crowd with careful curiosity. He did not rush. He did not bow excessively. He simply stood with quiet confidence as though he belonged in this alien world. Her advisors whispered among themselves. "He looks ordinary," one said. "Do not underestimate him," replied Thalira, her voice calm but firm. "Humans are not ordinary. Remember that it was his people who survived the Great Exodus and adapted to worlds far beyond their own." Eric moved toward the palace, every step measured. The Valorian guards, clad in iridescent armor, eyed him warily. He met their gaze without fear. Humans often relied on instinct and courage, and Thalira knew that was part of what made them remarkable. Inside the palace, a grand hall awaited. Its ceilings were vaulted, carved with intricate patterns that shimmered as light struck them. The walls displayed art that told the history of Zalaris, battles fought, alliances forged, and the endless pursuit of wisdom. At the far end, Queen Thalira sat upon a throne of crystal and steel, her posture regal yet approachable. "Captain Eric Kane," she said, her voice echoing in the hall, "you have traveled far to meet me. Welcome to Zalaris." "Your Majesty," Eric replied, bowing slightly in respect, though not overly so, "it is an honor to be here. I come with a desire for understanding and a hope for peace." Thalira observed him closely. He was not like the humans she had read about in reports. He was calm, deliberate, and his presence carried an unexpected weight of confidence. "The situation is simple," she continued. "My people and yours have clashed for too long. I propose an alliance through marriage. You will be my consort. Together we will symbolize peace." Eric's eyes widened slightly. The concept was unusual, even for a diplomat. "Marriage?" he asked, choosing his words carefully. "Is this a symbolic gesture, or both?" Thalira interrupted softly yet firmly. "It will unite our peoples in a way treaties and agreements cannot. I do not make this request lightly. I have studied your kind, Captain. Humans are adaptable, resilient, courageous. You are exactly the person I believe can help bring stability to our worlds." Eric paused, weighing the gravity of her words. He had faced impossible missions before, negotiated with hostile governments, and survived countless crises. Yet the idea of marrying an alien queen to secure peace was unlike anything he had imagined. And yet, he felt a spark of purpose. If this union could prevent war and save lives, then perhaps it was a challenge worth accepting. "I accept," he said finally, with steady eyes. "Not for honor, not for glory, but for peace." Thalira inclined her head slightly. "Wise, then preparations shall begin." Over the following days, the city of Zalaris buzzed with activity. Humans and Valorians alike marveled at the union. The palace was transformed with decorations blending both cultures, crystal sculptures inspired by Valorian heritage, banners depicting human symbols of unity, and gardens where alien flora mingled with earth plants. Eric spent this time learning about Valorian culture. He observed the rituals of respect, the discipline of the guards, and the way the people moved with grace and purpose. Despite the alien environment, he felt a strange sense of connection. The Valorians valued intelligence, courage, and honor, qualities humans shared in their own way. Thalira, for her part, watched Eric closely. He was quiet, thoughtful, and unassuming, yet she sensed a hidden depth. Unlike many humans, he did not try to impress or dominate. He learned quickly, adapted smoothly, and approached everything with calm logic. She felt a growing respect, even curiosity, for the man she had married, not for politics alone, but for the person he was. Their first meeting after the initial ceremonies was simple yet meaningful. They walked together through the palace gardens, alien trees casting long shadows over paths of polished stone. "You seem different from what I expected," Thalira said, her voice gentle. Eric smiled faintly. "I think humans are often misunderstood. We are not always strong in body, but we try to be strong in mind and spirit. Perhaps that is what you saw in me." Thalira considered this. Humans had survived against enormous odds, explored worlds beyond their own, and built civilizations that endured. Yet she had always doubted their ability to truly stand as equals to her kind, until now. "I admit," she said finally, "I am curious to see how your kind adapts to Valorian ways, and more importantly, I am curious to see what you are capable of." Eric chuckled softly. "You may be surprised, Your Majesty. Humans have a way of exceeding expectations when it matters most." In the days that followed, they shared meals, studied their respective cultures, and discussed strategies for maintaining peace. Eric impressed Valorian scholars with his insights, offering solutions that combined human pragmatism with Valorian elegance. The people around them began to see not just a diplomatic marriage, but a partnership of minds and hearts. Yet not everything was calm. Rumors of a rogue Valorian faction began to circulate, those opposed to peace and wary of humans' influence. Eric and Thalira were not naive. They knew that the union would be tested, but the Queen had made her choice, and Eric had accepted his role. Together, they represented a chance for something greater than either species could achieve alone. One evening, as the twin moons rose over Zalaris, Eric stood on the balcony beside Thalira. The city below shimmered with lights, a testament to centuries of culture, art, and civilization. "Do you ever fear what might come?" he asked quietly. "Every day," Thalira admitted. "But fear cannot guide us. Only courage and wisdom can, and you, Captain, seem to have both." Eric looked at her, a small smile on his lips. "Then we face it together, not as human and alien, but as partners." And in that moment, both realized something extraordinary. This union, born of politics, might grow into something far more profound. Not just an alliance of kingdoms, but a bond of trust, respect, and mutual admiration. As the night deepened, the palace stood silent, yet charged with anticipation. The first steps of a new era had been taken, not through force, but through understanding. And somewhere deep within him, Eric felt a stirring he had never known. A quiet confidence that, when the time came, humans were capable of wonders even the greatest Valorian warriors might envy. Little did they know, the tests ahead would reveal his courage and skill in ways no one could predict. A human had entered Zalaris not just as a diplomat, but as a force of ingenuity, resilience, and spirit. And soon the Valorians would witness the true power of humanity, not through weapons, but through heart, mind, and unyielding courage. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light over the palace spires. It was the beginning of an era where humans and Valorians would walk side by side, and a quiet promise lingered in the air. Peace was possible, but it would take both wisdom and courage to hold it. And so, the first chapter of their story closed, with hearts aligned, minds ready, and the world watching. The queen had chosen her human, and he was already proving that even the smallest spark of courage could ignite the greatest flame. The first days of peace on Xylaris were calm but tense. Citizens moved about their daily lives, marveling at the presence of Eric Kane, the human who had married their queen. Shops displayed a mix of human and Valorian art. Streets were alive with curiosity as humans and Valorians exchanged ideas, foods, and stories. The city looked peaceful, but beneath the surface, small shadows whispered of unrest. Eric spent much of his time learning about Valorian society. He walked among their people, observing their rituals, customs, and martial practices. Unlike humans, the Valorians had evolved for efficiency in both mind and body. Their movements were precise, their thoughts disciplined, and their technology elegant and advanced. Yet Eric noticed something else. Behind the disciplined exterior, some Valorians were restless, their loyalty to the queen uncertain. Queen Thalyra watched him quietly. She could see the way he absorbed every detail, noting patterns others might miss. She admired how humans could adapt to new worlds so quickly, and she felt a subtle shift in her own perception. Eric was more than a diplomat. He was a problem solver, a strategist, and a mind capable of seeing beyond the obvious. One morning, Thalyra approached Eric in the palace gardens. The twin moons were visible even in daylight, their pale light blending with the morning sun. "Eric," she said softly, "I have a request. Our guards are skilled, but I believe it would be beneficial for you to train with them. To truly understand us, you must experience our ways firsthand." Eric nodded. "I expected as much, Your Majesty. I will do my best to learn." The training began in a vast courtyard, surrounded by towering crystalline walls that shimmered with reflected light. Valorian instructors awaited, their bodies poised like living statues. Eric noticed immediately the precision of their movements, each action deliberate, fluid, and balanced. "Do not try to imitate us at first," said one instructor, a tall Valorian named Kylan. "You will bring your own strengths. Learn to understand, then adapt. That is how humans survive, and that is why you are here." Eric smiled inwardly. He had trained with humans in countless situations, learning to turn disadvantages into opportunities. "Understood," he replied. The first days were difficult. Valorian techniques relied on speed, timing, and coordination far beyond what most humans could achieve. Eric fell many times, but each time he rose, adjusting, observing, and improving. He was not the fastest, nor the strongest, but his mind worked differently. He noticed patterns, anticipated movements, and found ways to use his own body efficiently. Queen Thalyra occasionally watched from the balcony above. She was fascinated by his persistence. Most humans would have been overwhelmed by the complex routines, yet Eric continued to rise and learn. There was a quiet power in his approach, a combination of intelligence, courage, and humility. Meanwhile, in the city, rumors began to circulate. A small faction of Valorians, dissatisfied with the peace, whispered of rebellion. They feared that the humans would gain influence over the queen, changing traditions they held sacred. Though their plans were subtle, mostly espionage and sabotage, the possibility of conflict loomed. Eric sensed it too. While training, he noticed small anomalies. Messages left where they shouldn't be, minor disturbances in patrols, and whispers carried by those who hoped to remain unnoticed. Humans had long dealt with espionage and diplomacy, and he began to think ahead, planning contingencies quietly, without alarm. One evening, he spoke to Thalyra privately. "Your Majesty," he said, "I believe not all Valorians welcome this union. Some are testing the peace, quietly undermining it. We must remain vigilant." Thalyra nodded, her expression serious. "I am aware. My advisors have hinted at it, but you notice more than anyone. I trust your judgment." Their partnership deepened as they shared knowledge and strategy. Eric explained human methods of observation, communication, and problem-solving, while Thalira shared the history and philosophy of her people. Both found new respect for the other's approach. Days turned into weeks, and Eric's training improved remarkably. He began matching the Valorians in coordination and agility, not by mimicking them perfectly, but by using his own strengths, creativity, adaptability, and calm under pressure. He learned to anticipate movements, recognize openings, and use strategy instead of brute force. Kylan, the instructor, approached him one morning. "You have progressed faster than expected, human. You do not fight like a Valorian, yet your approach is remarkable. You turn disadvantage into advantage. That is rare." Eric bowed slightly. "Thank you. I only do what I must to survive and protect those who depend on me." Thalira observed this exchange from above, a faint smile on her lips. She realized she had underestimated the depth of human potential. Here was a man who could fight without malice, plan without arrogance, and inspire without words. The first real test came unexpectedly. While walking through the palace gardens, Eric noticed a group of Valorian guards moving unusually. They whispered to each other, glancing around nervously. Something felt wrong. He approached cautiously, maintaining composure. "What is happening?" he asked quietly. One guard hesitated, then admitted, "A small group of Valorians is planning to disrupt the peace. They intend to interfere with upcoming ceremonies." Eric's mind worked quickly. He did not panic. He observed, analyzed, and devised a plan to prevent the disruption without confrontation. Using a combination of misdirection and careful communication, he redirected the group, ensuring the ceremonies proceeded smoothly. No alarms, no conflict, only subtle control of the situation. Thalira, witnessing this later, was impressed. "You acted decisively, yet without aggression. Humans truly are different from what I imagined." Eric smiled. "We survive by thinking ahead. Violence is rarely the best solution." Over the following weeks, Eric and Thalira spent more time together. They studied the city's defenses, the Valorian military routines, and even explored the outer regions of Zalaris. Eric observed how Valorians used teamwork, precision, and intelligence in everything they did. In turn, he introduced small human innovations, like alternate patrol patterns, early warning systems, and methods to improve coordination between squads. The palace was alive with preparation for the Unity Festival, a celebration symbolizing the new alliance between humans and Valorians. The festival would showcase art, music, and cultural exchanges, and it was also a subtle test of trust and cooperation. Eric worked with both humans and Valorians to organize it. He suggested collaborative performances, where each species shared its skills, creating displays of ingenuity and beauty that impressed all who watched. Thalira marveled at his ability to bring two very different peoples together without conflict. Yet, even amid celebration, the shadows lingered. The rogue Valorian faction grew bolder, though their actions were still indirect. Messages, rumors, and small disturbances. Eric noted each one carefully, preparing quietly for the time when their intentions would become clear. One evening, as the festival preparations neared completion, Eric and Thalira walked along a quiet terrace overlooking the city. "Do you ever fear that this peace will fail?" Eric asked. Thalira shook her head gently. "Fear is natural, but we cannot let it control us. The strength of our people and our willingness to understand each other is greater than fear." "With you here, Captain, I feel that strength even more." Eric looked at her. "Then we face what comes together, not as separate species but as partners." She smiled, a rare expression for the Queen. "Yes, and I trust that when the time comes you will be ready." Eric's eyes gleamed with quiet determination. "I always am." In the days that followed, Eric's influence became evident. Valorian soldiers began to incorporate some of his tactical suggestions. Civil engineers adopted human methods for efficiency. Even the citizens noticed small but meaningful improvements in daily life. Humans and Valorians were learning from each other, growing together, and slowly mutual respect began to replace suspicion. And yet, the story was far from over. Shadows still moved unseen, whispers still carried secrets, and the rogue faction was gathering strength. Eric knew that soon, the true test of his skill, courage, and ingenuity would arrive, but he was ready. He had learned the ways of the Valorians, adapted their techniques to his own strengths, and earned the Queen's trust. He was a human on an alien world, married to a queen, living in a palace that gleamed under twin moons. But more than that, he was a symbol of hope, a bridge between species, and a quiet force that could shape the future. The sun set over Zelaris, casting long shadows across the palace. Eric stood beside Thalira once more, looking out at the city below. "Tomorrow begins a new chapter," he said softly. Thalira nodded. "And together we will face it. Whatever comes, human or Valorian, we will endure, and we will prevail." And in that calm evening glow, the promise of unity shone brighter than the crystals of the palace. Peace had taken root, but only those who were brave, clever, and adaptable would ensure it flourished. Eric Kane was ready. The world of Zelaris would soon see the true strength of a human mind and heart, not through weapons, but through courage, intelligence, and unwavering resolve. The shadows of war might linger, but the light of cooperation and understanding now glimmered brighter, and the first seeds of lasting unity had been planted. The air over Zelaris was unusually crisp that morning, carrying a faint metallic scent from the palace's many towers. Captain Eric Kane stood on the balcony overlooking the city, his hands clasped behind his back. The streets below were alive with activity, citizens moving about their daily routines, unaware that tension was growing like a quiet storm in the distance. Rumors had reached the palace of a rogue faction among the Valorians, a small group dissatisfied with the peace treaty and resistant to human influence. They were not violent in the way armies might be, but their cunning and ambition made them dangerous. Their plan, if successful, could unravel the fragile peace between humans and Valorians. Eric turned to Queen Thalira, who approached silently, her violet eyes sharp yet thoughtful. "The council is growing uneasy," she said. "They believe this faction might act soon." Eric nodded. "Then we must be ready, but rushing into confrontation could create more harm than good. Strategy must come first." Thalira's gaze softened slightly. "I have watched you closely, Eric. You do not act recklessly. That is comforting." Together, they made their way to the training halls of the palace, where Eric had been learning Valorian combat methods. These halls were unlike anything on Earth. The floors shimmered with a polished material that responded to touch, and walls displayed holographic diagrams of Valorian maneuvers, history, and philosophy. While Eric had mastered diplomacy, here he had discovered the discipline and intelligence behind Valorian strength. Eric moved through the training exercises with calm focus. He was not the fastest or the strongest among the Valorian guards, but he excelled in reading opponents, predicting movements, and turning constraints into opportunities. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated. To the Valorians, his style was unusual, fluid, and adaptive rather than rigidly precise, but it worked. Thalira observed silently from the balcony above the training hall. She had seen warriors of every kind in her lifetime, yet Eric's approach fascinated her. He combined human instinct, calm judgment, and tactical intelligence, qualities that often surpassed sheer physical strength. "Captain," she said softly, stepping down beside him, "you have learned well, but are you ready for the real trial?" Eric looked up, meeting her gaze. "I am ready to do whatever is necessary to protect peace, Your Majesty. I do not need to be the strongest, I only need to be wise." Their conversation was interrupted by a messenger, a young Valorian with silver-blue skin and glowing eyes. "Your Majesty, Captain Kane," the messenger said urgently, "the rogue faction has moved. They have taken several council members hostage in the citadel of Luminara." Eric felt a chill, not of fear, but of responsibility. The citadel was heavily fortified, designed to withstand even the most sophisticated attack. To approach it directly would be dangerous. But Eric did not hesitate. "We must act carefully. This is not about fighting. It is about strategy, precision, and protecting everyone involved." Thalyra nodded. "Then you will lead, Eric. I will accompany you." The journey to the citadel was tense but silent. Eric studied the terrain, noting the placement of guard towers, patrol patterns, and natural cover. Unlike typical battlefields, this was an urban environment filled with civilians and delicate structures. Every decision required foresight and careful planning. When they arrived, Eric took a moment to assess the situation. The rogue faction had fortified the inner courtyard, but they had made errors. Overconfidence had left certain approaches less guarded. Using these observations, Eric began mapping a strategy. "We will not storm the gates," he explained to Thalyra. "We will move quietly, using the alleys and side passages. Our goal is to reach the hostages and secure them without escalating conflict." Thalyra watched him work, impressed by his adaptability and patience. Most leaders would have ordered an all-out attack, relying on force. But Eric's approach emphasized calculation over confrontation, a philosophy both human and wise. The first stage of the plan required decoy maneuvers. Eric instructed a small Valorian unit to appear at one entrance, drawing attention, while he and Thalyra moved through the lesser-guarded passages. He communicated in simple yet precise terms, ensuring that even soldiers unfamiliar with humans, indirect strategies could follow. As they progressed, the rogue faction noticed subtle movements and attempted to intercept them. Eric did not meet them head-on. Instead, he used the environment, sliding down walls, guiding patrols away with small disturbances, and signaling Thalyra to take alternate routes. It was not about overpowering anyone. It was about outthinking them. At one point, they reached a heavily secured door leading to the council chambers. The lock was sophisticated, alien in design, but Eric's knowledge of engineering and human intuition allowed him to disable it quietly, granting access to the hostages. Inside, the council members, though frightened, were unharmed. "Stay calm," Eric whispered. "We will get you out safely." Thalyra observed him again, awe mixing with growing admiration. Humans often relied on courage and improvisation. Here, Eric's intelligence shone brighter than the best-trained Valorian warriors. She realized that strength was not only physical, it could also be strategic, calm, and precise. The next challenge was to exit without confrontation. Eric quickly assessed the guards outside the chamber. He noted their patrol patterns and distractions caused by the decoy unit. Using hand signals and subtle movements, he guided the council members and Thalyra through a hidden passage. It was not an easy journey. At one point, a guard noticed movement and approached. Eric stepped forward calmly, using a combination of gestures, voice modulation, and positional advantage to guide the guard away, avoiding any harm. Even Thalyra was surprised at his ingenuity. Finally, they reached the courtyard where the decoy units had drawn attention. The rogue faction, realizing their plan was failing, attempted to regroup, but Eric had anticipated this. He created barriers, misdirections, and obstacles, allowing the hostages to move safely while the faction found themselves blocked and confused. When the hostages were finally safe, the council members looked at Eric and Thalyra with relief and gratitude. "We owe you our lives," one said. Eric shook his head. "You owe no one. We only ensured peace could continue. That is what matters." Thalyra placed a hand on his shoulder, a rare gesture of warmth and trust. "You have done more than I imagined, Eric. You have not only saved lives, but you have demonstrated the heart of humanity, cleverness, courage, and compassion." You fight not for glory but for what is right. Eric smiled faintly, the weight of the situation lifting slightly. I only act when necessary, Your Majesty. Humans have a way of adapting to challenges. Sometimes wisdom is stronger than strength. Back at the palace, the mood was one of cautious relief. News of the successful rescue spread quietly, inspiring confidence among Valorians that humans could be more than allies. They could be partners capable of leadership and insight. Thalira and Eric spent the evening walking through the palace gardens. The alien flora glowed softly in the moonlight, and the air was calm. Both reflected on the events of the day. You were remarkable today, Thalira said, breaking the silence. Not because of strength, but because of mind and heart. Eric nodded. I have learned from your people as much as I hope you have learned from mine. Peace requires more than diplomacy. It requires understanding, planning, and courage. Thalira looked at him thoughtfully. And in this, you have exceeded my expectations. I believed this union would symbolize peace, but now I see it may also symbolize hope, ingenuity, and human potential. Eric smiled faintly. Then perhaps the world is ready to see what humans can achieve, not through force, but through wisdom and perseverance. For the first time since his arrival, Eric felt a sense of belonging. He was a human among aliens, yet he had proven that intelligence, adaptability, and courage could bridge any divide. And Thalira, for her part, began to see the man she had married not merely as a political tool, but as someone whose presence would shape the future of her people in ways no one had imagined. The rogue faction had been outwitted, the council members were safe, and the palace stood as a symbol of united resolve. Yet Eric knew this was only the beginning. Challenges would come, and the trials of honor would continue. But he also knew that humans had an innate ability to rise to challenges, to inspire, and to lead with heart and mind. As the twin moons of Zelaris reflected on the palace spires, Eric and Thalira stood together in quiet contemplation. The night was calm, but both knew that the road ahead would test them in new ways. And yet, in that moment, a sense of shared purpose and mutual respect filled the air, a promise that together they could face anything. And so the trial of honor had begun, not in the clash of weapons, but in the demonstration of strategy, courage, and the human spirit. It was a trial that would echo in the hearts of Valorians and humans alike, proving that true strength lies in wisdom, unity, and unwavering resolve. The first light of dawn spilled across Zelaris, illuminating the grand city with soft golden rays. From above, the palace spires gleamed like beacons of hope, but beneath the beauty, tension had grown. The rogue faction, though small, had not been defeated. They were regrouping, preparing to challenge the fragile peace. Their ambition was clear: to undermine the union between humans and Valorians and test the limits of both species' strength and resolve. Captain Eric Kane stood on the balcony of Palace Thalira, observing the city below. His mind was a whirlwind of calculations, strategies, and contingencies. Unlike others, he did not see the situation merely as a battle to be won. To him, this was a test of wisdom, teamwork, and unity. Thalira approached silently, her expression composed but intense. Eric, the council reports unusual activity at the city's borders. The rogue faction is organizing forces. They will test us soon. Eric nodded. Then we must act before they make a move. But we cannot rely solely on Valorian strength or human cunning alone. We must combine both. That is how we will succeed. Together, they convened with the Valorian Council and select human representatives. Maps of the city, its outskirts, and surrounding terrain were spread across the table. Eric pointed to key locations where natural barriers and architectural features could be used strategically. The faction expects us to act predictably, Eric explained. They rely on strength and intimidation, but humans have another tool: adaptability. If we use terrain, timing, and misdirection, We can guide them into positions where their efforts become ineffective without harming anyone. The Valorians were skeptical at first. Their warriors were trained for direct confrontation, for precise strikes and overwhelming force. But Eric's calm demeanor and clear reasoning inspired confidence. It is not just about force, he continued. It is about outthinking, outmaneuvering, and protecting everyone in the process. Thalira, watching him, felt a surge of admiration. She had married this human to secure peace, but now she began to see the true potential of humanity. This was not a man who relied on brute strength. This was a man who could orchestrate victory like a conductor leading a symphony. The city prepared for the approaching test. Barricades were positioned, communication lines reinforced, and citizens advised to stay indoors. Eric moved among the troops, Valorian and human alike, offering guidance, encouragement, and precise instructions. His approach was methodical. He emphasized cooperation, focus, and observation. When the rogue faction finally made their move, it was not with a rush of violence, but with clever, coordinated attempts to disrupt the city. They sent messages, moved through hidden passages, and tried to exploit weaknesses. Eric's mind raced as he anticipated their moves. He directed Valorian units to subtly shift positions, guiding the rogue faction into corridors where their movements were contained. Human volunteers, skilled in observation and quick adaptation, served as guides and relays. Thalira watched as he moved through the city like a force of nature, calm yet unstoppable. At one point, the rogue faction attempted to block the main bridge connecting the palace to the city's heart. Eric, thinking quickly, redirected forces through side passages, using the environment to channel their movement safely away from civilians. He then instructed a group of human engineers to deploy non-harmful deterrents, barriers that slowed progress and created confusion without endangering anyone. The rogue faction, though skilled and determined, found themselves frustrated, unable to reach their objectives. At the palace, Thalira observed in awe. Humans were often underestimated for their physical strength, but Eric's brilliance lay in his ability to anticipate, adapt, and lead with clarity. He seemed to transform the battlefield into a stage where every move was deliberate, and every obstacle became an advantage. During the confrontation, Eric encountered a group of rogue leaders attempting to infiltrate the palace. Instead of meeting them with force, he used strategy and communication. He guided them into a chamber where they could be safely contained and reasoned with. His approach was clear: prevent harm while maintaining control. "Captain Kane," Thalira said as she arrived beside him, "you move with the precision of a Valorian master, yet your thinking is human, ingenious and unexpected." Eric smiled faintly. "We all have our strengths. I only use what is available to protect everyone and maintain peace." Sometimes the mind is stronger than any weapon. The rogue faction, unable to achieve their goals, began to falter. Eric anticipated their next moves, setting up positions to channel them into areas where they could no longer threaten civilians or disrupt the city. Step by step, he orchestrated their retreat, turning potential chaos into order. By midday, the city was calm. The rogue faction had been neutralized without casualties, their ambitions contained. Citizens emerged cautiously from their homes, surprised and relieved to find the city intact. The palace, and indeed all of Zalaris, had stood firm, not through raw strength, but through wisdom, foresight, and coordination. Thalira approached Eric as he surveyed the city from the balcony once more. "You have done what I did not think possible," she said softly. "Not a single life lost, yet the threat is gone. You fought like a god of war without raising a hand in violence." Eric shook his head, his expression calm. "I only acted with the tools I had. Humans excel in observation, adaptation, and planning. Strength alone cannot solve everything." Word of Eric's actions spread throughout the city quickly. Valorian soldiers, once skeptical of humans, now viewed him as a symbol of courage and wisdom. Citizens, too, were inspired, seeing that a human could protect them with intelligence and heart, not just physical might. The council convened that evening to discuss the events. Thalira spoke first. Captain Kane has shown us that peace can be defended without destruction, that strategy and unity can triumph where force alone would fail. This is a lesson for all of us. Eric humbly accepted the praise. It was a combined effort. Humans and Valorians together can achieve what neither could alone. We are stronger when we work as one. That night, as the twin moons rose over Zelaris, Thalira and Eric walked through the palace gardens. The soft glow of alien flora illuminated their path, casting shadows that danced like whispers in the air. "You have changed my perspective," Thalira said. "I married you to secure peace, but now I see that humans possess a kind of strength that is rare even among Valorians. Your courage, wisdom, and calm in the face of danger, it is inspiring." Eric looked at her, a quiet determination in his eyes. "Humans may not be the strongest, but we adapt. We learn. And when it matters most, we rise to the occasion. That is how we survive and thrive. And I hope, Your Majesty, it is also how we can help maintain peace here." Thalira smiled, a mix of admiration and respect. "Indeed, you have proven that true strength is not measured in power or weapons, but in intelligence, courage, and heart. Today, you were more than a human. Today, you were a leader, a strategist, a true god of war in every sense without ever shedding blood." The two walked in silence for a while, reflecting on the day's events. Eric knew that challenges were far from over. The rogue faction was only one of many potential threats, and diplomacy, vigilance, and unity would always be needed. Yet he also knew that humans had a unique ability to rise above danger, think clearly under pressure, and inspire those around them. As the night deepened, the city of Zalaris slept peacefully for the first time in many years. The union between human and Valorian, initially forged in politics, had begun to demonstrate something far greater. It was not just a symbol of peace. It was a testament to collaboration, wisdom, and the incredible potential of humanity. And though Eric rested that night, he could feel the spark of purpose within him. The future would bring more tests, more trials, and more opportunities to prove that humans were capable of greatness, not through force, but through courage, intelligence, and heart. Thalira watched him quietly as he prepared for sleep, realizing that her choice to marry him had far exceeded her expectations. Not only had he secured peace, but he had also inspired a generation, showing that even a human could act with the brilliance and precision of a Valorian master while maintaining compassion and care. The night over Zelaris was calm, yet charged with promise. The city had seen the rise of a human who could lead, protect, and inspire, a human who could turn strategy into art and courage into action. And in doing so, Eric Kane had begun to redefine the meaning of strength, not just for humans, but for all those who would witness his legacy. The world was watching, and humanity's potential had never been clearer. The morning sun bathed Zelaris in gentle light, casting long shadows across the palace gardens. For the first time in many months, the city felt truly calm. The rogue faction had been neutralized, their ambitions contained, and the citizens were going about their daily lives without fear. But for Captain Eric Kane and Queen Thalira, the day promised new challenges, not of danger, but of consolidating the fragile peace they had fought to preserve. Thalira walked beside Eric through the palace corridors, her presence quiet yet commanding. "The council believes the city is safe," she said, her violet eyes thoughtful. "But safety is not just the absence of conflict. It is trust, understanding, and unity. How do we ensure it lasts?" Eric paused, looking out a window at the bustling streets below. "By working together. Humans and Valorians have different strengths. Humans adapt quickly, think creatively, and inspire courage. Valorians have discipline, precision, and a rich history of knowledge. If we combine these strengths, we can create something stronger than either could alone. Thalira nodded slowly. She had married him to secure political peace, but now she realized he offered something far more valuable, a vision for lasting unity. The first task of the day was to strengthen connections between the two peoples. Eric suggested hosting a festival celebrating both human and Valorian cultures. Art, music, and food from both worlds were shared, blending tradition with innovation. The festival was a symbol of collaboration, a tangible demonstration that coexistence was possible. As citizens mingled, Eric moved among them, observing, listening, and encouraging dialogue. Children played together, humans and Valorians learning each other's games. Elder scholars discussed philosophy and science, exchanging ideas that might have once seemed incompatible. Slowly, the barriers of misunderstanding began to crumble. Thalira watched him, quietly admiring his ability to lead without dominating. Unlike most leaders, he inspired rather than commanded. He encouraged participation, valued every voice, and demonstrated that courage was as much about listening as it was about action. Amid the festival, a messenger arrived with news from the outskirts of the city. Some distant Valorian settlements were wary of human influence, suspicious of the recent changes. They had not been involved in the rogue faction, but their hesitation threatened to undermine the broader peace. Eric met with the local leaders, not as a conqueror but as a mediator and problem solver. He listened to their concerns, acknowledged their fears, and shared examples of successful collaboration from the city. Slowly, skepticism gave way to curiosity. Eric proposed joint projects, gardens, schools, and workshops where humans and Valorians could learn from each other and build trust together. By evening, the settlements had agreed to participate. Eric's calm intelligence and genuine respect for both peoples had turned doubt into enthusiasm. Thalira, observing from her position, felt a growing pride. Not only had the human she married proven capable in strategy and leadership, but he also possessed a rare gift for unity and understanding. That night, the palace hosted a council meeting to discuss the next steps in strengthening the alliance. Eric outlined a multi-stage plan to promote cultural exchange, education, and civic collaboration. Each initiative emphasized cooperation, respect, and mutual benefit. The Valorian Council, initially skeptical of human methods, recognized the wisdom and practicality in his proposals. "Captain Kane," said one elder Valorian, his voice tinged with awe, "your approach is unlike anything we have seen. You do not rely on force, but you achieve results beyond what many warriors could accomplish. How do you do it?" Eric smiled faintly. "I observe, I listen, I plan. Strength alone cannot build lasting peace. Unity comes from understanding and trust. Humans have learned this over centuries, adapting, surviving, and thriving in ways others may underestimate." Thalira leaned forward, her eyes meeting his. "You have proven that humans are capable of greatness, not just in battle or strategy, but in leadership, compassion, and vision. You inspire hope." Eric nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility but also a sense of purpose. "Then let us ensure this hope reaches every corner of Zelaris, so that the next generation knows that unity and courage are more powerful than fear." Over the following weeks, the palace and city became a center of collaboration and learning. Human and Valorian scholars shared knowledge in science, history, and technology. Artists from both worlds created murals and sculptures that celebrated the fusion of cultures. Markets offered goods and recipes from Earth alongside alien delicacies, allowing citizens to experience diversity firsthand. Eric personally oversaw the creation of training programs where humans and Valorians practiced problem-solving, teamwork, and strategic thinking together. These exercises were not about combat but about adaptability, innovation, and mutual respect. Soldiers learned to appreciate human ingenuity, while humans admired Valorian discipline and precision. One afternoon, Thalira and Eric walked through a training session in progress. Children were working together to solve engineering puzzles, laughing as they discovered solutions. Young Valorian warriors observed humans using creative tactics to overcome challenges. "You see," Eric said quietly, "this is how we build lasting peace. Not with fear, not with force, but with learning and cooperation." Thalira smiled. "I have never seen such potential realized so quickly. You have not only secured peace, Eric, you have elevated it." As the weeks turned into months, Xylaris transformed. Suspicion faded, replaced by curiosity and admiration. Humans were no longer outsiders. They were partners, allies, and friends. Citizens spoke of Eric as a hero, not for defeating enemies, but for showing what humans could achieve through wisdom, courage, and heart. Eric and Thalira continued to grow closer, their relationship evolving beyond politics into mutual respect and trust. They shared quiet moments in the palace gardens, discussing philosophy, culture, and the future. "You have done something remarkable," Thalira said one evening as they watched the twin moons rise. "You have proven that true strength lies not in power, but in intelligence, courage, and compassion. You have given both our peoples a gift greater than any alliance, a future filled with hope." Eric smiled, feeling a rare warmth in his chest. "We gave it to ourselves. Humans and Valorians together can achieve anything. Today, we have begun a legacy that will outlast any one ruler, any one species." The final challenge came in the form of a grand council ceremony, where leaders from every region gathered to formalize the Human-Valorian alliance. Representatives spoke of collaboration, trust, and shared achievements. Eric and Thalira were at the center, symbols of unity and inspiration. As Thalira stood before the council, she looked at Eric. "This union began as a marriage of necessity," she said. "But it has become a marriage of respect, vision, and courage. Captain Eric Kane has shown us that humans are not merely allies, they are partners, capable of brilliance, compassion, and leadership. May this example guide our people for generations." Eric stepped forward humbly. "We stand together not because of strength alone, but because we trust one another. Humans and Valorians, united in purpose, can achieve what neither could alone. Let this peace be a testament to the power of collaboration, understanding, and courage." The council erupted in applause. The ceremony ended not with fanfare or celebration of conquest, but with a renewed sense of unity and purpose. Citizens from every corner of Xylaris understood that peace was not just a promise, it was a responsibility shared by all. Later, as the city slept under the soft glow of the moons, Eric and Thalira stood together on the palace balcony. The city below hummed with life, a living testament to the success of their partnership. "You have exceeded my expectations," Thalira said softly. "I married you to secure peace, but you have given us something far greater, a legacy of trust, wisdom, and courage. Humans are truly remarkable." Eric placed a hand over hers. "We did it together. Humans may be clever and resilient, but it is the cooperation of every person here that made this possible. True strength comes from unity." They stood in silence, looking out over the city they had helped transform. The rogue faction had been neutralized, the council and citizens were secure, and the bond between humans and Valorians had never been stronger. And as the twin moons reflected off the palace towers, it became clear. This was not the end of their journey, but the beginning of a new era, one in which humans were no longer outsiders, but symbols of courage, intelligence, and hope. One in which peace was maintained not by fear, but by understanding and collaboration. For Captain Eric Kane, the man who had arrived as a diplomat and left as a hero, the legacy was simple. Humans, when guided by heart and mind, could achieve greatness beyond imagination. And for Queen Thalira, the legacy was equally profound. She had discovered that the right partnership, born of trust and respect, could change the fate of worlds. The story of Zalaris ended not with victory in battle, but with victory in unity, wisdom, and the enduring spirit of humanity. And as the stars shone over the peaceful city, a quiet truth became clear to all. When courage, intelligence, and heart combine, even the greatest challenges can be overcome. Peace had been forged, not through force, but through the brilliance of a human mind and the unity of two worlds. And thus, Zalaris entered a new era, a time of hope, collaboration, and a shining example of what humans can achieve when they rise to their full potential.